Okay, so what was your project about? What did you do your research into?
I looked at procrastination in students, and I was interested in procrastinatory behaviour.
Okay, that sounds very interesting. How did you go about collecting your data for your project?
Well, I invited students along to the laboratories individually. They came thinking that they were going to complete a cognitive task. They weren't aware that the study was about procrastination. They were invited along to the laboratory and asked to sit in a room where there's a lot of distraction tasks around, such as there's a box of chocolates, a newspaper, a magazine. The students sat down and they were asked to complete a letter cancellation task, which is basically just pages and pages of rows of letters. Where they are asked to search for a target letter and cancel it out. I left the room for 20 minutes to let the students practice for the task before they were asked to complete a test on the task. And they weren't aware that they were being recorded whilst I was away from the laboratory. And then I looked at the recordings to see whether they actually did practice for the task or whether they procrastinated by doing things like reading the magazines.
Okay, so within that very interesting sounding study, what ethical issues were there in the project?
Okay, well obviously the participants didn't know that they were being recorded, so that was a massive ethical issue. So
there's some deception then?
Yeah, there was a lot of deception involved, because when they came along they didn't even know that the study was going to be a procrastination study. So I had to brief them to make them think that it was a cognitive task. And then once they'd completed the task, I debriefed them so that they knew what the study was about. And I also then had to ask permission off them for me to watch the recordings, as they weren't aware that they'd been recorded beforehand.
Okay, so you ensured that they were aware after the study had finished, because if you told them beforehand...
Yeah, it would have impacted on the nature of the study,
Okay, perfect. Okay, that sounds really interesting. So, for somebody who's never done this kind of research before, how did you go about analysing the data, from the videos?
Well, the videos are 20 minutes each. So I just watched them through in Windows Media Player, and I decided to at first analyse the behaviour every 5 seconds. But then as I was going through, I decided that not much was happening between the 5 seconds, so I reduced that time down to 10 seconds. And I did a time sample, so every 10 seconds I'd stop the recording and write down whether the participant was procrastinating or practising for the task.
Okay, sounds a really interesting way of analysing your data, because for some people they wouldn't know how to do that, so thank you for that. And just as a final point, just the final thing I'd like to ask is, did you find any differences in your study? What was the kind of results that you found? Yeah,
well, the participants were actually asked to complete a procrastination scale as well, which was Lay's procrastination scale, and I found that people who scored highly on that scale also tended to spend more time procrastinating when they're actually in the laboratory. So even though there was a difference, the findings weren't significant, but there was still a difference.
And do you think if you'd had more people, maybe you'd have found a significant difference?
Yeah, possibly. I think if there'd have been more people, and maybe try it with different tasks as well, and have different distraction tasks in the room, and obviously if maybe leave them for longer as well if I could. But
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Procrastination.